J'étais très extrême avant comme personne, je cherchais à beaucoup avoir d'attention, beaucoup même embêter les autres. Mon besoin constant d'attention faisait que je pouvais être désagréable. Et je crois que l'islam m'a apporté une certaine paix, un équilibre, et a calmé ce besoin. En islam, on met beaucoup l'accent sur le respect pour les mères et pour les membres de la famille. Et je crois que je respectais ma mère, mais là c'est encore plus décuplé, c'est vraiment mon devoir. Et ma grand-mère aussi, donc je pense que mon lien avec mes parents a été amplifié et enrichi grâce à l'islam. Et ça, ma mère, elle le voit. Souvent d'ailleurs, elle me dit, elle n'est pas musulmane, mais elle me dit, imaginons que je vais chez elle pour les vacances et elle me dit de ranger ma chambre et que j'ai la flemme, elle va me dire ta religion te dit que tu dois écouter ta mère. Et c'est vrai, elle a raison. Mais donc je crois qu'elle a vu que l'islam avait un impact sur moi. Elle le dit, elle l'utilise contre moi. Non, mais c'est des très belles évolutions et j'en suis très content. Alhamdoulilah. La vision que j'ai de Dieu, c'est évidemment mon créateur, c'est évidemment une force supérieure, omnisciente, omnipotente, qui est à l'origine de tout. Mais je crois que grâce à l'islam, je l'ai vu comme mon meilleur ami aussi. Le Messie premier, alayhi wa sallam, souvent parle à Dieu comme mon bien-aimé. Et j'aime beaucoup cette réflexion, dire que c'est comme un amoureux, comme un meilleur ami, qui reste un Dieu bien sûr, mais qui est proche et qui prend toujours soin de moi.
Oh, c'est mignon.
Mais hier encore au téléphone, qu'est-ce qu'il me disait ? J'ai eu une histoire, juste chez moi j'ai eu un problème de chaudière et tout, et je lui dis j'ai pas envie d'en parler. Elle me dit si, dis-moi. Je fais non, j'ai pas envie. Elle me dit ta religion, tu dois dire à ta mère, tu dois tout dire à ta mère. Et je fais maman, je suis pas sûr de ça. Et elle fait si.
You're watching the God Summit, brought to you by the Review of Religions.
The lack of the institution of Khilafat accounts for the current state of the Muslim community across the world. If we take a survey of what is happening across the world to the failure of Islamic governments, wars in Muslim republics, about good many 54 or so Islamic republics, they are all challenged, many sects in the house of Islam, so many wealth from most of the Muslim world in terms of material wealth, but today the spiritual wealth, the spiritual well-being of the Ummah is very clearly missing in our lives. Islam has spread so far across the world, but there is no holding center for a greater part of the Ummah. So it is anybody's suggestion in this day and age that there is no hope for the Ummah, because the one that was foretold to have appeared to serve as the rallying point, the uniting point, the holding center for the Ummah, as clearly foretold by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with indicators emerging from the Holy Quran very clearly, and practical establishment or re-establishment of Islam as in the hands of the Imam of the age, which accounts for the renaissance of Islam in the hands of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam. The world have rejected this reformer foretold by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if they have not benefited from the appearance of this reformer, the Imam al-Mahdi, then they cannot benefit from the institution of Khilafat. And how do we have to appreciate the institution of Khilafat at this level? If you take a look at chapter 24, verse 56 of the Holy Quran, you will clearly see that Allah has promised to those who obey Him and obey His Prophet that from amongst them He will give them the institution of successors, Khilafat. So the Muslims should be asking what has happened to this verse in Surah Nur in this day and age, 14 centuries after the appearance of Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If we deny the appearance of the Imam of the age and we are not benefiting from the institution of Khilafat, then the question is, where have we found the fulfillment of the verse in Surah Nur? You don't need Khilafat, you are fine with the Hadith and the Holy Quran, good. But come to the practical aspect of what they have chosen over Khilafat. How united are they? As we sit here, a regime has fallen in the Muslim world. Syria, for instance, after 13 years of rebellion. Is rebellion the teachings of the Holy Quran? Is ill treatment of your citizens the teachings of the Holy Quran? Because those are the two accusations emanating from Syria, that the regime of Assad was that brutal. And then rebellion emanated. So that's just one side of it. People who have established Islamic governments, and those governments should be based on the foundations of the Holy Quran, which is the very best book and constitution for the governance of every human society, have failed woefully. Beyond that, even those in the religious realm who have held very good many beliefs about their interpretative understanding of the Holy Quran, and they have given themselves so many names that are representative of the sects in Islam. How organized are they? How many of these religious leaders along sectarian line or national line that can raise up their hands that we have found the Islamic infrastructure, the administrative structure, as it was there in the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, as it happened there in the time of the Khulafa ur-Rashidin? What is Islam in this day and age? On the contrary, they themselves are conceding on television that Islam was meant to be in this scattered form. How can they find a message from Allah the Almighty? How can they find a prophet who brought the final message from Allah the Almighty, in the sense that the Quran is the final Sharia, Islam is the final religion to humanity? How can his religion remain very much scattered till the end of times? So with all what they have achieved with the Holy Quran and the Hadith, it has not given them unity in the Islamic world. But yet, a community that has accepted the reformer of the age and has entered into the bayat of the Khalifa of the time, representative of the Imam of the age, continue to thrive as a united force. 220 countries of the world, one community, one leader, one Khalifa. When he gives instructions, people follow. And those who have the Holy Quran alone by itself and the Hadiths cannot vouch to unite themselves even in the least of a village. True divine sovereignty rests in the hands of the Khalifa of the time. It's not a political sovereignty, it's not a territorial sovereignty. As I have said, 220 countries of the world, you have a blessed man governing over those Jamaats in 220 countries of the world, without a standing army, without a police force, without any United Nations agreement. Wherever his voice reaches in his Friday sermons, his addresses, and administrative directions and instructions going across the world, the followers are ready to comply, irrespective of the divergence of humanity on planet Earth. Along racial, tribal, regional, national, and all the other lines, we are all united as one force under the roof of the institution of Khilafati Ahmadiyyat. So if the Muslims were to demonstrate just one example that will stand parallel to this of the Ahmadiyya Khilafat established, then we will see the proof of when they talk about they have received the blessings of the Holy Quran and that of the Hadith, and there is no need for Khilafat. The divine sovereignty rests in the hands of the Khalifa, and that sovereignty is not limited by territory. That sovereignty does not require any physical territorial conquest. That sovereignty does not require political power. All that is needed for the establishment of this sovereignty was the divine command of Allah, which happened in 1889 with the blessed appearance of the Imam of the age. And those who follow Jamaat history, they now know there is no mistake, there is no error. Before the demise of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi Islam, he said the second manifestation will come, but you will not benefit from it until I depart. So what more prophecy are we waiting for? A man approaching his departure from this world and gave a roadmap, and 116 years under just 5 Khulafa, 5 leadership. Al-Hajj Mavi Hakim Nuruddin in 1908 to that of Hazrat Masrur Ahmad, Al-Talab Nazi Aziz. 116 years, one community, one leader, with this blessed divine sovereignty that does not rest on any political territory. The moment Huzuri Anwar received my hands in his blessed palms, it's so emotional that you find it very much difficult to describe. But what was the takeaway? That I was there taking the bayat of the Khalifa very directly. It placed a greater responsibility of obligation on me for the rest of my life, that I have taken the oath of allegiance in the hands of the Khalifa very directly. How blessed are we to have a community that is prototype and directly representative of the community of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as we are taking the bayat, these were the views running through my mind, and maybe through my veins, directly those spiritual veins connecting blessings from the Khalifa of the time. And when I came back home, I told them that I have come back with the bayat of the Khalifa of the time. It was in a representative capacity for Africa. Much as it is personal to me, so I feel it is personal to Africa and Sierra Leone specifically. So with these blessings of the bayat I have taken directly, we should be ready to increase our obedience levels to the Khalifa of the time, to comply with every bit of an instruction coming from Huzuri Anwar to the letter and in time. So that is the spirit, that is the feeling I left that hall with, and I left the UK with. Huzur's very first service to mankind very clearly is his blessed prayers. I have not heard of any human being on earth who has declared that before I go to bed every night, I will remember every nation, every people across the world in prayers. I have not heard that from any other religious leader yet. So that is the very high level of gifts to the world. How many Friday sermons or religious preachings you hear from other people so quite often that is requesting prayer for the rest of humanity, for the rest of the world, the Muslim world? How many times has this blessed Khalifa mentioned or requested the community to pray for the situation in Palestine and many other places across the world? So the first blessing of the institution of Khilafat is that unending prayer for the rest of humanity across the world. If we are to review what is happening in Sierra Leone, what the blessed institution of Khilafat has done, here is a country which constitution declares that it is government's responsibility to provide education for every Sierra Leonean to the best of his ability. So it is not even a responsibility that is shared by any other person in our constitution. But through the blessed institution of Khilafat, we are in a country today with 313 schools and more to follow. Huzuri Anwar approved 25 small schools for Sierra Leone, including of primary and secondary school. In 2 districts of Sierra Leone and more, we have not reached with our junior and senior secondary schools. As I speak, we are constructing junior secondary school where we had only had primary schools going on. Why is Huzuri Anwar actioning this particular gift to Africa? To expand the space for education, that people can have secular education backed by deep religious sense of understanding and responsibility. How many hospitals have been built across the world through Khilafat directions? In fact, the entire Nusrat Jahan scheme came as a mercy from the institution of Khilafat. Having a 5-nation tour of West Africa and realizing the gap in the field of education, realizing the gap in the field of medical services to people across Africa, our blessed Khalifa of the time, Hazrat Nasir Ahmad Rahimahullah, introduced the Nusrat Jahan scheme as a blessing for the rest of the world, a help to the rest of mankind. Today, commencing 1970 to date, how many hospitals in many African countries providing medical services to people across the African continent? In Sierra Leone, as I speak, under the blessed guidance of the Khalifa of the time, we are just in process of completing an infrastructure called the Aisha Maternity Hospital for a country that has labored and toiled under the difficulties of maternal health care in a country. We are coming to give more support to what government has achieved so far. So the blessings of Khilafat starting with that of prayers for the rest of humanity to direct humanitarian service is peerless. You cannot compare it to any other human intervention in terms of giving divine aid, giving physical support to people.
You're watching the God Summit, brought to you by the Review of Religions.
The promised Messiah, peace be upon him, said, "Our paradise lies in our God. Our highest delight is in our God, for we have seen him and have found every beauty in him. This wealth is worth procuring, though one might have to lay down one's life to procure it. This ruby is worth purchasing, though one may have to lose oneself to acquire it. O ye who are bereft, run to this fountain and it will satisfy you. It is the fountain of life that will save you. What shall I do? And how shall I impress the hearts with this good news? And by beating what drum shall I make the announcement that this is our God, so that people might hear? What remedy shall I apply to the ears of the people, so that they should listen?"
I waited 7 years, and then I lost him. When I was younger, I always thought that motherhood was a natural part of life, and that it would just come to me when the time was right. I didn't have any idea that it could be so challenging and so complicated. 4 years into my marriage, I began to feel a weight kind of settle over me. I used to see young moms and children playing in the park, and I just had this question, when is it going to happen for me? Why isn't it happening? When am I going to have a child of my own? And the frustration slowly turned into worry. I wanted to pursue medical help, but my husband wasn't ready yet. He really didn't want to go down that road. He had firm, resolute faith that indeed Allah Almighty did have a plan for us and that we would be blessed with a child one day. Finally, after countless emotional conversations, we decided to pursue medical help. We had test after test and appointment after appointment, and finally, we were given a diagnosis: unexplained infertility. So that word unexplained, it kind of just hung in the air for me. And, it kind of said to me that nothing was wrong, but everything was wrong. And it was almost as if we had discovered a problem, at least we could have taken some steps to try to fix it. But in this case, there was nothing to fix. See, infertility is not a static state of grief. It kind of comes in cycles. There's cycles of hope and trauma every month. You begin with a cautious sort of optimism, a glimmer of hope, and then it ends with defeat and despair when you realize that that month also did not bring you the news that you were hoping for. Throughout it all, my husband was very, very supportive. He was indeed my best friend. We had not talked to anybody about this, so neither my parents nor his, nor our relatives, nor our friends, nobody outside of the two of us knew that we were going through these struggles. And so that, I think, helped to strengthen our bond a lot more. In those days, I was also in a very visible role in my service in the Jamaat. I was serving as National Secretary Tarbiyat Lajna Maila Canada, and my service took me to many parts of the country. I met so many different ladies and young girls, and inevitably everywhere I went, that question came up, do you have children? And then when I answered no, the follow-up questions were always the same. How come? When do you want to have children? Do you not want to have children? Why do you not have children? Is there something wrong with you? I had countless remedies and prescriptions and unsolicited advice, lots of homeopathic medicines that were given to me at those events and meetings and interactions. And I know that everybody has the best intentions at heart, so I received it with that sentiment. However, it would bring back my reality to me in those moments. Over and over again, I was kind of reliving my grim reality. One day, everything changed. Allah Almighty gave us the news that we had longed for, and that we were going to have a child. We were undescribably happy. There's no words to describe the joy that we felt. We felt like jumping up and down and telling everybody our good news. But as the months went by, everything kind of unraveled. And one day I was not feeling very well. We went to the emergency, and the news that shattered my world, that I had lost my child and that my baby had died. And it was almost as if the ground beneath my feet vanished and my world was shattered. I remember that I was called for a follow-up appointment after the loss, and it was a Friday morning, and it was raining very hard that day. And as I was taking the train back home, I was reflecting on the 7 long years that I had spent longing, fervently praying, intensely praying for this blessing. And in a few days, I was actually scheduled to travel to Vancouver because Hazur Anwar, may Allah be his helper, was traveling to Vancouver to inaugurate the Beit Rahman Mosque. So I was going through these thoughts in my head and really feeling very raw, unfiltered pain and anguish, both emotionally and physically. And I was talking to God in my mind, and I said to him, I'm not going to go to Vancouver because I think that you don't need me. You don't need my service. You don't even care about me. It was one thing if he had not blessed us with this child to begin with. We would have made peace, and we were in the process of making peace with our reality. I said to God that, you say to us in the Quran, we read that remember me and I will remember you. And everywhere I have gone, everywhere I do go, everyone I meet, all I do is I talk to people about you. And I ask people to worship you. I tell them how to be close to you. I tell them to remember you. All I do is I talk about you because I love you so much and I wanted you to be pleased with me. So what is it that I did that displeased you? And as I was speaking to God, I heard a voice which I knew to be God's, beyond a doubt. And the voice said in Urdu, Yehi to tera ahad tha. And the understanding that flashed into my heart immediately was in reference to the pledge of Lajna Maila that we recite, that हम अपनी जान, माल, वक्त और औलाद को कुर्बान करने के लिए हर वक्त तैयार रहेंगे. And the understanding that came into my mind was that हमने तुझसे तेरी जान, माल और वक्त की कुर्बानी तो ले ली थी, बस सिर्फ एक ये औलाद की कुर्बानी रह गई थी जो हमने तुझसे ले ली. And now it was almost like the pledge was complete. And as soon as I heard these words, immediately what flashed into my mind was fear. Now I was just, जिसे उर्दू में कहते हैं कि आप बिल्कुल सीधे हो जाते हैं. And now I was so afraid that I had displeased God, So my motivation was that I had to kind of undo the words that I had uttered moments ago, and that I should do everything I can to please Him. And so I asked for forgiveness, and I was determined that I will travel to Vancouver, inshallah, and I did. When I went to Vancouver, I was fortunate and blessed enough to read Salat behind Huzur Anwar, may Allah be his helper. And on the last day of my trip, during my sajda, I had a vision that I had entered into heaven. And that really felt to me that Allah Almighty had accepted me and had accepted my sacrifice. So I came back from Vancouver and life settled again into a routine. And a few months later, Allah Almighty once again gave us the news that we had longed for. We took a lot of precautions, a lot of cautious optimism, and then alhamdulillah were gifted with our daughter, Safa. This journey for me was more than a test of patience. It was a strong lesson in faith, in resilience, and in submission to God's will. You know, to this day, I keep these words that I had heard, Yehi to tera ahad tha, very dear and very close to me, because it's a reminder to me of the pledge that I made to Allah Almighty and the strength that God gave me to keep that promise. Alhamdulillah.
You're watching The God Summit, brought to you by the Review of Religions.
किस कदर ज़ाहिर है नूर उस मबदाउल अनवार का बन रहा है सारा आलम आईना अब सार का
Very touching, very heartwarming, and I will highlight that last part there by Munazza, who shares her story. And this takes you back to, and again, we reflect on God's attributes to get to understand Him. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, explained to us in a Hadith al-Qudsi that Allah Almighty says that He is to His servant how His servant perceives Him. So He presents Himself to us in different ways. And here is a mother. In a verse of the Holy Quran, actually, Allah Almighty talks about a child. It's a gift that Allah decides to give. And for some, He doesn't even give. And in Surah Al-Araf, He talks about, a couple that He created. And then He gives them a child. They promise that we will be loyal to you. You will be thankful when you give us this child. And when He gives them the child, they turn away. And they start idol worship because of that child. So a child is not always a gift, especially when it's taken away, then you're tested. There is a narration of the wife of the Promised Messiah, Hazrat Amma Jan, when Bashir Awwal, her son, passed away in infancy. And the way he passed away, the wife of the Promised Messiah was carrying the child, who was in his last moment. She could tell. She handed the child over to the Promised Messiah and says, it's time for Asr prayer. When she offers Asr prayer, she comes back and asks about her child, because at the end of the day, she's a mother. And the Prophet ﷺ said, he has passed away. This was a mother who knew that these are the last moments with my child, but I'm going to be grateful to God and worship Allah Almighty.
You can't forget. That's a beautiful, beautiful story. And some people might be wondering, wait, in that moment, what was the right thing to do?
Yeah.
But what we forget is, Diba, that God is the one who gave us that child in the first place.
Absolutely.
Every moment of joy that we felt, that we feel if we have a loved one, and now we all have somebody who has passed away, whether it's a child who had a pet who's passed away they were close to, or a mother, the extreme opposite of this, just a mother having a child. It's God Almighty who gives us every microsecond, every happy memory, every relished laugh, every tear that we cry with them.
Absolutely.
So to forget the one who gave us that happiness, this is why Islam says God always comes first. And this never gets in the way of us actually fulfilling the rights that we owe to the
And then you get a reward too. Again, she was given Muslim mode after that. You can imagine. And Manazah was given a beautiful child after that, right? So, absolutely.
We've got some amazing messages coming in from Ireland. Alhamdulillah, the Irish Jamaat are watching the God Summit, including new converts. Then we've got Burkina Faso. They're listening to the programs very intently. The mission in South Korea has sent us a message. Zimbabwe is watching. We're watching also, Shafi says, from London, Ontario. We're here in London, England. They're in London, Ontario, in Canada. Then from Kerala, India, Tahir Ahmed has a picture of his adorable baby also watching the God Summit. So it's truly global.
Absolutely. From Ivory Coast, we have Sila Ismail is watching from Abidjan, which is the capital of Ivory Coast. And another message from who says, watching the God Summit from Lima, Peru. I couldn't hold back my tears. This is amazing that within just a couple of hours we're reaching all these places. And again, it shows us the reach and the blessings of talking about God Almighty. And again, the prayer in the beginning that Allah is blessing all of us. Sabat Sahab, you went out where we almost tested the world. Here we're talking about internal and personal messages. But His Holiness's vision was also to go out and put this knowledge to test, where we had social experiments. We met people and you had that. We'll see that as well to see how you reacted and what the takes of people were in that social experiment that we did.
Mountains are these majestic giants that have captivated humanity for millennia. But beneath their towering peaks lies a scientific miracle that was revealed in the Holy Quran 1400 years ago. The Quran asks, have we not made the earth a bed and the mountains as pegs? Modern geology has discovered something remarkable. Mountains aren't just what we see above ground. Like massive icebergs, they have hidden roots extending deep into the Earth's mantle, up to 5 times deeper than their visible height. Just as a tent's peg stabilizes a tent, these mountain roots stabilize the Earth's crust. How could anyone in the 7th century have known this fundamental geological fact? But the Quran reveals even more. It states, and thou seest the mountains which thou thinkest to be firmly fixed, but thou shalt pass away like the passing of the clouds. This verse tells us something that would have seemed impossible to ancient people. Mountains are actually moving. They float on the Earth's mantle like rafts on water, carried by shifting tectonic plates. Modern geoscientists have confirmed this exact phenomenon. The Himalayas literally float on the denser liquid rock beneath, just as an iceberg floats in water, precisely as described in the Quran 14 centuries ago. These scientific facts about mountains, their peg-like roots, and their floating nature were impossible to know in the 7th century. Their presence in the Quran stands as an undeniable proof of its divine origin. For who else but the creator of these mountains could have revealed their hidden nature so perfectly?
You're watching The God Summit, brought to you by the Review of Religions.
We were agreeing way more than we thought we would.
Human beings did that. God didn't do that.
We want to leave it off the table if that's what you're wanting to do.
I don't agree with everything that you're saying.
There is no pastors, no disrespect.
I would love for you to bring me to the other side.
I have found my purpose in life. 3, 2, 1, go.
I would say that is correct. I found my purpose in life, but it's my professional life. That gives me a sense of what psychologists call self-actualization. So my name is Winston Charles. I was baptized or christened in the Anglican Church, so I consider myself an Anglican. My background, professional background, is arbitration, adjudication, mediation.
I have to make my meaning and purpose. So I'm the only one that can do that. I owe something to the universe or wherever we came from, or just nature in general. Hi, I'm Steve Jakatis. I'm an atheist/humanist. I'm a humanist officiant through Humanist Canada, so I conduct funerals, weddings, and other celebrations of life.
So I have a basic life philosophy of do what you want as long as what you're doing isn't harming anyone else. I'm very proud to be progressive and do that kind of thing. So my name is Gil, 22, university student at York University studying political science. I was brought up Anglican, turned atheist because of a combination of science and how do you know every other faith is wrong.
I appreciate the value of putting truth first. That's what I believe I found in the Bible. Yeah, my name is Greg Armstrong. I'm a pastor in the Mississauga area, West End, Toronto, of a Christian church. It's a Protestant and a Baptist church.
Islam says, you and I didn't choose to be born. So we cannot choose our fundamental purpose. I'm not saying we can't choose what we're going to be within our human sphere, but we were born with certain things in our plate.
My name is Sabahat Ali. I am an Ahmadi Muslim, and I serve as an Imam of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
Everyone remembers God on a turbulent flight.
Like what the Bible teaches is that people have a general awareness of God through the created order, but that doesn't mean necessarily that everyone is going to default there in an emotional, stressful situation. But I do think that that does happen for a lot of people.
I always hear there's no atheists in foxholes, so that's kind of one of the things that I was thinking in my mind when that happened. I'm sure there are some people, like you said, who are potentially staunch atheists that when the bombs start flying, they're going to start praying or reverting back to maybe a belief that they had from their childhood. I wasn't really raised in a belief system, so for myself, the concept of God I understand, but I don't really understand the draw to it like other people might.
Plane crashes are scary. People don't know the statistics of how rarely they happen. People are just freaked out in the moment. Not everyone knows the stats. You just see that happening and you're thinking, okay, in that moment, I think I might die. Got to start thinking about the afterlife. If there's an afterlife, I don't want there to be nothing afterwards. I want there to be something. So obviously you're going to want to, I might turn Christian for 5 minutes on a turbulent flight too. A lot of people are going to go, okay, I'm about to die. There better be something after this, because if I'm done here, I hope I either don't go to hell or there isn't nothing afterwards.
Let's say, take all belief out of it. You have to think if this is the end or not. That question is fundamentally related to the idea of God. Yes, you can say that there may be some atheists who say that they will actively or naturally not think of any God at all, and they will have a different system. You said it beautifully as well, Greg, that it's within us to invoke whatever is out there.
There are a lot of people who actually put their confidence in the pilot.
Interesting.
Who believe that the pilot would know how to get them out of that turbulent situation. So I don't agree that everyone on board would think about God.
You can be spiritual without believing in God.
Nowadays, the spiritual but not religious movement, I think it's a cop-out. Any definition of spiritual that you raise without the highest and best religious teachings, firstly, they're all taken from religious teachings, 100% of them. There's not a single teaching in any moral philosophy anywhere in the world that does not lean on, depend upon, or borrow from religious teachings. In Islam, spirituality is your soul connecting with whatever is behind this universe in an active way. And anything that you call spiritual without God depends on God, the prophets of God, or the books of God.
I'm not spiritual. I don't even know what that word means, because to me it doesn't mean anything. People can claim to be spiritual, like you're saying, and not have any basis for saying that or claiming that.
Yeah.
However, there are people who claim to be spiritual without believing in a God.
I could be in different spots depending on how we define each term. So believing in God with a capital G, which is the question, that typically connotes a transcendent personal God.
Yeah.
So if that's what we mean, then somebody could be flexible on the the definition of spiritual, spiritual with a different concept of the divine. Typically, a lot of people are, and maybe believe more of a pantheistic concept of God, in which case I don't count that as with the capital G.
I think the perfect thing that you said, Greg, we're agreeing way more than we thought we would. We're maybe different questions, we're going to really go different. But anyway, if we just mean, can you physically hold that belief in your head? You can hold any belief in your head. You can believe a unicorn shot a laser out of their eye and that created the earth. People can make whatever beliefs in their head they want. You can make any thought in your head and think any thought you want. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but you can.
I would disagree that you can believe anything you want. You can think or conceive of something, but that's different than believing it, because believing it is affirming that it's true.
Well, yeah, but people can come to what people have come to. If you look at the diversity of beliefs humans have, there's
They can
so
be convinced of
great
something, is what you're
diversity
saying.
of it. Yeah. And if the other belief was, and this was if this was the definition, I'm about to move places. If we mean you can be spiritual without believing in God, and it can make like logical, coherent sense and possibly actually be true, I'm about to go to the other end of the room. But if you just mean, can you personally have that belief, then yeah, I'm right here.
A professor of Aboriginal studies, I went up to her and I said, you didn't make mention of God in your lecture. She said, no, we don't make reference to God. And she said, first, we believe in the vibration that propel the universe. So we communicate with water, we communicate with rocks. We have respect for animals. We have respect for the herbs. And she defines that as being spiritual.
If God existed, there wouldn't be suffering in the world.
Yeah, no, almost every religion and religious belief all involve something along the lines of, I'm not even just talking Christianity, which obviously was brought up in No Better. I mean, all of them all talk about in their faiths, like, just the way God's portrayed. There's nothing that says God wouldn't, there's no thing anywhere that shows anything about God not allowing suffering if he existed. In most religions and texts, there's always something about certain gods allowing this group, the people who follow me are good and deserve well, and the bad ones deserve to suffer, or certain people who say they're part of my faith but are coming over my teachings need to be tested, and part of the suffering is a test from God or whatever. Point is, God's morality doesn't necessarily have to involve everybody's, it doesn't have to be Garden of Eden 24/7, or everybody lives like Adam and Eve did before the fruit in the fall. If God came in our own image, and in our image, we often hate people and believe certain people deserve to suffer. God made us in our image. So a lot of what we did came from God. God can believe certain people can suffer. I don't see any idea that God would just be like, everybody deserves hippie love, la la la, and nothing bad happens, lollipops and rainbows. That doesn't seem very like a God to me.
The two atheists are on opposite sides. I want to understand.
Yeah, I find this fascinating. You'd think it's weird that I'm more with the conservative Christian, even though I'm atheist. It's weird, yeah.
If a God has the characteristics that I feel are contradictory, being all-loving, all-knowing, and what's the other one?
All-powerful.
All-powerful, or maximally powerful, then I believe that that being, having those characteristics, would create a world without suffering.
When we say suffering, if I'm working out to get fit, I'm suffering. Of course I'm suffering, and we celebrate that. This is one major thing that a lot of atheists do bring up, that if God really did exist, he should have created a version, and I really agree with Gil here, where there was no suffering, whereas the idea of suffering, having knowledge that that thing will hurt me, propels me into a course of action, to adopt a course of action that will minimize suffering. Then the idea of pain itself, the entire ordeal of pain itself, it is a language that tells us that something is wrong. Talk to any physiologist in the world, any doctor in the world, or any science student, and they will tell you that if we did not have pain, that would be against a merciful God. Suffering in Islam actually refers to the interplay between life and death. And if we look at just evolution alone, it is this intricate interplay between life and death, the race to try to survive, to better ourselves, and improve, that has propelled all of biological evolution from the unicellular organism to what we see today. Take suffering out of it, and I would agree that that God is selfish and did not want anyone to feel pleasure. We cannot experience pleasure without pain.
I think I draw the line with needless suffering. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm trying to go.
An example of needless.
So like needless suffering would be something like the genocide in World War II, right? Like extermination of the Jewish people and the Gypsy people who are completely wiped out.
That human beings carried out.
Right, but still, right? It just the idea of something on such a massive scale. Same thing.
Being allowed. You mean being allowed, like God allowing that? I'm trying to see, because human beings did that. God didn't do that.
Yeah, being allowed to happen, right?
Okay.
And the same thing when it comes to, and this is just my personal thoughts.
Yeah, no,
right? And the same thing happening with children who starve every day, or anybody who starves every day. You know, like I've been on the ground level. I've seen people. I've handed out food and clothing and whatever, right? You see these people suffering.
Yeah.
You see them to the point where it's beyond what I would deem as acceptable.
So there's enough food. We know the statistics. There's
Absolutely,
enough food in the world.
Absolutely.
So God provided. We have to look at the whole picture then, right? You're pointing out something totally valid.
No, I don't.
I'm just humbly saying, again, look at the big picture. What did God do? God created a species that is capable of incredible good. We know that. We all know we are all capable of incredible good. Then he provided us more than enough fresh food and water. We chose to commit evil, and we're attributing that to God. If I choose to, use drugs every day, and I say God did this, why did God let me do this?
I mean,
there's no merit in life.
It seems to me it just comes down to agency, right? So if He's giving us that agency or not,
yeah,
right? So if God
free will
sees, free will, right? I don't agree with everything that you're saying. One, like the need for suffering. I think if all that you meant was a capacity for suffering in the sense of the capacity for pain.
Yes.
Then I'm fine with you. But then when you talked a lot about evolution and stuff, I don't agree with evolution. So, and I think that actually is a problem. But from a biblical point of view, we also have the fallenness of creation. So everything is now falling apart and corrupted, which is another difference that we share, like we don't agree on, between Islam and Christianity, right? Because you have the doctrine of fitra, that we don't come into the world corrupted, right?
Yes, we are all.
So that's a big difference. So that's a foundational difference. In doctrine about our worldview.
God has given us the willpower, use the word willpower.
Free will,
or agency, to make choices. That is reinforced by the fact that God has given us 10 commandments, at least from a Christian perspective, to identify what we should or should not do. You should not steal, you should not commit adultery, you should not commit murder. So when I look into that, I'm suspicious that there is a God that is responsible for the creation of the universe, including us. But God has given us the latitude to make choices.
I agree.
And if we make bad choices, we could inevitably hurt others, which becomes suffering.
I appreciate both of your outlooks on this, and thank you for clarifying things with me. From the outside looking in, it's harder for me to be making that internal critique. You guys have given me some things to think about, so I'm going to go back to, home and think about this.
So we don't need a God to be a good person.
You definitely don't need God to be a good person.
The supernatural elements of the religions cannot be scientifically validated.
That line right there, I already disagree with it.
You're watching The God Summit, brought to you by the Review of Religions.
दुनिया है ये बच्चों की है बच्चों की ये दुनिया यहाँ खुला है इल्म का रास्ता देखो आके खोलो पूछ के देखो पूछ के जानो दिल में क्या है बोलो इल्म बढ़ाना मेरा या रब रब्बे ज़िदनी इल्मा रब्बे ज़िदनी इल्मा रब्बे ज़िदनी इल्मा रब्बे ज़िदनी इल्मा रब्बे ज़िदनी इल्मा।
अरे ये क्या है? लेकिन डॉक्टर बबलू कहाँ है? मुझे लगता है आज वो हमें कुछ ख़ास दिखाना चाहते हैं। और एक ख़त भी पड़ा है, वो भी मेरे नाम। देखते हैं आज इस ख़त में क्या लिखा है। डॉक्टर बबलू का है, कहते हैं मुदब्बर भाई मैं कुछ लेट हो जाऊंगा, आप बचगान को बता दें कि वो एक कलम और कागज़ पेंसिल और पेपर लेकर आ जाएं। हम आज कुछ खेलेंगे भी और सीखेंगे भी। اور ہاں بچوں کو ایک ویڈیو بھی دکھا دیں. یہ ویڈیو عبد الرحمن کی ہے اور وہ کہہ رہا ہے کہ ڈاکٹرز نے اس کو ایک شیر کا دل لگا دیا ہے. اس کا کیا مطلب ہوا؟ اچھا ایسا کرتے ہیں کہ پہلے ہم ویڈیو دیکھ لیتے ہیں.
دنیا ہے یہ بچوں کی ہے بچوں کی دنیا یہاں کھلا ہے.
یہ عبد الرحمن ہے. عبد الرحمن اتنا بیمار ہو گیا تھا کہ کچھ پتہ نہیں چل رہا تھا کہ عبد الرحمن ٹھیک بھی ہوگا کہ نہیں. اس کو ایک بہت ہی خطرناک دل کی بیماری تھی.
سامنے تیرے رکھا اسے اپنے فضلوں سے بھر دے خدایا اسے اپنے.
لیکن پھر عبد الرحمن حضور سے ملا اور آہستہ آہستہ ٹھیک ہو گیا اور اس نے ہسپتال سے حضور کو ایک پیغام بھجوایا.
آپ کا بہت شکریہ. بس دل لگ گیا. بس شیر کا یہ پتہ نہیں کس چیز کا دل لگا. شیر کا لگائے گا. بس دعا میں یاد رکھیے. اپنے آپ سے لندن نہیں آؤں گا انشاءاللہ. بس دعا میں یاد رکھیے.
عبد الرحمن کی کہانی آج کے لیے کیوں ضروری ہے یہ ہم آپ کو پروگرام میں بعد میں بتائیں گے.
اچھا تو یہ ہے عبد الرحمن. اور دیکھیں بچوں ہمارے ساتھ اب کون آ گیا ہے. السلام علیکم ڈاکٹر صاحب. ہم انہی سے پوچھتے ہیں کہ عبد الرحمن کون ہے.
السلام علیکم مدبر بھائی. السلام علیکم بچگان. میں معافی چاہتا ہوں کچھ دیر ہو گئی ہے لیکن آج کا پروگرام اتنا خاص ہے کہ یہی سوچتے سوچتے رہ گیا کہ بچوں کو کیا بتائیں.
کیوں آج کا پروگرام کیوں ایسا خاص ہے؟
آج ساری دنیا میں احمدی بچے ریویو آف ریلیجن کا ٹرانسمیشن دیکھ رہے ہیں اور اس میں سب سے زیادہ ضروری سوال یہ ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ ہے کون اور کیا اللہ تعالیٰ ہماری دعائیں سن سکتا ہے. عبد الرحمن کی ہم پوری ویڈیو بھی دیکھیں گے بعد میں کیونکہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے اس کی اور اس کے اماں ابا کی دعاؤں سے اس کو ٹھیک کر دیا. لیکن اس سے پہلے
کیا
مدبر بھائی میں اپنا کوٹ تو پہن لوں.
اچھا ہاں یہ تو نظر آ ہی رہا ہے کہ آج آپ کچھ خاص چیزیں دکھانا چاہتے ہیں ہمارے بچوں کو.
جی آج میں صرف ڈاکٹر ببلو ہی نہیں ہوں. آج میں پروفیسر بھولا کی طرح بچوں کو کچھ دکھانا اور سکھانا چاہتا ہوں.
اور وہ کیا؟
بچگان آج میں آپ کو دنیا کا سب سے بڑا راز بتانے جا رہا ہوں. ایسا راز جو بہت لوگ سمجھ ہی نہیں پاتے.
اچھا وہ کیا راز ہے؟
یہ راز ہے اوہو میں بھول ہی گیا. بچوں نے کیا پینسل اور کاغذ لے لیا ہے؟
جی ڈاکٹر صاحب آپ کا پیغام پہنچ گیا تھا اور میں نے بچوں کو بتا دیا ہے کہ کاغذ قلم لے کر بیٹھیں.
لگتا ہے آپ بھی میرے ساتھ رہ کر ذہین تر ہوتے جا رہے ہیں.
جی سب آپ ہی کا تو کمال ہے.
اچھا تو بچگان آج کا راز دنیا کا سب سے اہم راز ہے. آپ بھی کبھی سوچتے ہوں گے کہ کیا اللہ تعالیٰ واقعی ہے اور کیا اسی نے دنیا بنائی ہے اور اگر اللہ تعالیٰ ہے تو پھر کیا وہ ہماری دعائیں واقعی ہی سنتا ہے؟
یہ تو واقعی بہت ہی اہم سوال ہیں اور بہت مشکل سوال بھی ہیں.
دیکھیں مدبر بھائی میں آپ کو بھی سمجھاتا ہوں. یہ دیکھیں میرے پاس یہ سوپ ہے اور اس میں کچھ الفابیٹ کے لیٹرز اور حروف ہیں.
جی ڈاکٹر صاحب اس میں تو بہت سارے حروف ہیں.
بالکل. اب آپ اسے ہلائیں اور دیکھیں کہ کیا یہ حروف خود بخود کوئی کہانی بناتے ہیں.
ٹھیک ہے میں ہلاتا ہوں کچھ اور اب ہلا کے میں اس کو ڈالتا ہوں اس چھوٹی کٹوری میں. ڈاکٹر صاحب ان سے تو کوئی بات نہیں بن رہی. اس کے تو کوئی معنی ہی نہیں ہے.
یہی تو بالکل. مدبر بھائی آپ بھی اپنی پینسل اور کاغذ پکڑے اور بچگان آپ بھی تیار ہیں؟
جی ڈاکٹر صاحب میں نے تو کاغذ اور قلم پکڑ لیا اور بچوں آپ بھی تیار ہیں؟
جی تو بچگان اب آپ کے پاس 10 سیکنڈ ہے اور جب میں سٹارٹ بولوں گا تب آپ نے کچھ کرنا ہوگا. ٹھیک ہے مدبر بھائی؟
ٹھیک ہے ڈاکٹر صاحب. اس کا مطلب ہے کہ جب آپ سٹارٹ بولیں گے تو ہمیں کچھ لکھنا ہوگا. لیکن کیا؟
10 सेकंड के अंदर आपने जल्दी जल्दी से कुछ भी हरूफ और लेटर्स लिखने हैं, लेकिन सोचना नहीं है।
इसका मतलब है डॉक्टर साहब ऐसे जैसे जो भी कोई लेटर जहन में आए, जैसे ए, एक्स, एम, एफ, बस लिख देना है वो लेटर बगैर सोचे समझे, ऐसे ही करना है?
जी तो तैयार हैं? तो काउंटडाउन को करते हैं स्टार्ट। 3, 2, 1, स्टार्ट। स्टॉप स्टॉप स्टॉप, आपका टाइम खत्म हो गया है।
ठीक है डॉक्टर साहब, ये देखें।
वाह, कितने रैंडम लेटर्स हैं, लेकिन एक बात बताएं, क्या इनमें से कोई भी मतलब निकलता है?
नहीं डॉक्टर साहब, इनका तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं बनता।
तो इसका क्या मतलब हुआ मुदब्बर भाई? कुछ सही लिखने के लिए क्या चाहिए?
डॉक्टर साहब, असल में हमें अगर कुछ लिखना हो तो पहले हमें सोचना पड़ता है और फिर सोच समझ के हम कुछ लिखते हैं। कभी कभी ऐसा होता है कि हम बहुत जल्दी जल्दी में कोई जुमला बना लेते हैं, लेकिन उस वक्त भी हमें महसूस नहीं होता, लेकिन हम अपने दिमाग में कुछ ना कुछ सोच रहे होते हैं और बहुत तेज़ी से सोच के लिख रहे होते हैं।
जी बिल्कुल, अगर कोई सोच और समझ पीछे ना हो तो कोई भी जुमला नहीं बनता। तो कुछ लोग ये भी कहते हैं कि दुनिया बस खुद ब खुद ही बन गई है, बस खुद ब खुद ही इंसान बन गया, खुद ब खुद ही सूरज, सितारे और चांद बन गया।
अरे वाह डॉक्टर साहब, इससे तो मुझे एक कहानी याद आ गई। एक बार एक बहुत बड़े आलिम थे, उनकी मुलाकात हुई एक दहरिये से, यानी एक ऐसे इंसान से जो खुदा को नहीं मानता था, और वो इत्तेफाक से किश्तियाँ चलाता था। तो वो जो आलिम थे उन्होंने उसको बताया कि आज एक अजीब बात हुई। आज मैं दरिया के किनारे से गुज़र रहा था और मैंने देखा कि एक किश्ती थी जो खुद ही चलती थी। वो एक तरफ से दूसरी तरफ जाती थी, एक किनारे से दूसरे किनारे पे जाती थी, और एक तरफ से लोगों को बिठाती थी और दूसरी तरफ उतारती थी, और फिर दूसरी तरफ से लोगों को बिठाती थी और इस तरफ उतारती थी। तो उस आदमी ने कहा, जो खुदा को नहीं मानता था, कि बस चुप कर जाओ, चुप कर जाओ, ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता, तुम बहुत गलत बातें बता रहे हो, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। और दूसरे लोगों को भी कहने लगा कि इसकी बात मत सुनो, इसकी बात मत सुनो, ये गलत बातें बताता है जो हो ही नहीं सकती। तो फिर उन आलिम ने कहा कि तुम इस बात पर तो ईमान नहीं ला सकते कि एक कश्ती खुद अकेली एक तरफ से चल के दूसरी तरफ जाए और लोगों को एक तरफ से दूसरी तरफ पहुंचाए, लेकिन तुम इस बात को मान सकते हो कि इतनी बड़ी कायनात खुद ब खुद बन जाए, उसमें पौधे और फल और जानवर और इंसान भी खुद ब खुद बन जाएं, और फिर पानी भी बरसा करे, बारिश भी हो, और फिर कभी हवा भी बन जाए और पैदा हो जाए जिससे हम सांस लेते हैं, और ये सारी चीज़ें खुद ब खुद बन सकती हैं, लेकिन तुम ये नहीं मान सकते कि एक कश्ती एक तरफ से दूसरी तरफ अकेली चलती हो। हालांकि ये सारी बातें जिनको तुम मानते हो, ये तो इससे भी ज़्यादा, बल्कि 1000 गुना ज़्यादा मुश्किल हैं, लेकिन तुम किश्ती का चलना नहीं मान सकते। जब उस आदमी ने इस बात पे गौर किया तो वो भी इस बात का कायल हो गया कि खुदा मौजूद है।
मुदब्बर भाई, ये सूप तो अब आप पी ले, लेकिन बच्चों को ये समझाने के लिए मेरे पास एक और भी आइडिया है।
अच्छा, वो क्या आइडिया है, जल्दी से बताएं। और वो अब्दुल रहमान की वीडियो भी तो देखनी थी हमें।
वो भी देखते हैं, कुछ सब्र भी तो करें मुदब्बर भाई।
अच्छा चलें फिर, दिखाएं क्या दिखाना चाहते हैं आप।
अब हम एक और तजर्बा और एक्सपेरिमेंट करेंगे। ये देखिए मेरे पास स्पेशल बिल्डिंग ब्लॉक्स।
तो क्या इरादा है आपका इनके साथ?
आप इन ब्लॉक्स को हिलाएं और देखें कि क्या ये खुद ब खुद बुर्ज खलीफा की तरह बन जाते हैं।
मैं ऐसा करता हूँ कि मैं कुछ ब्लॉक्स लेता हूँ और फिर इस दूसरी कटोरी के साथ मैं इनको हिलाने की कोशिश करता हूँ। ठीक है, मैं अब हिलाता हूँ।
बुर्ज खलीफा बन जा। अरे बन भी जा।
डॉक्टर साहब, अभी तो कुछ नहीं बना।
फिर से करके देखें।
बनी? नहीं डॉक्टर साहब, अभी भी कुछ नहीं बना। मैं 1-2 और ब्लॉक्स डालता हूँ, फिर शायद बन जाए।
फिर से करके देखें।
ओके डॉक्टर साहब, हम जितना भी ब्लॉक्स को हिलाएं, खुद ब खुद तो कोई इमारत नहीं बन सकती।
देखा, ये तो आप भी समझ ही गए ना। अगर एक घर, एक गाड़ी या कोई भी चीज खुद नहीं बन सकती, तो फिर ये दुनिया भी तो खुद नहीं बनी ना। इसको बनाने वाला भी कोई है, और वो हमारा अल्लाह मियाँ है। अल्लाह ने ही इस पूरी कायनात को बनाया, और जो इतनी बड़ी दुनिया बना सकता है, तो क्या वो हमारी दुआएं नहीं सुन सकता?
डॉक्टर साहब, बिल्कुल हमारी दुआएं सुन सकता है। लेकिन अभी तक हमने जितनी बातें सीखी हैं, उससे तो ये पता चलता है कि एक खुदा है जिसने ये कायनात बनाई है। लेकिन इसको पता करने के लिए कि क्या वो हमारी दुआएं भी सुन सकता है या नहीं, उसके लिए तो हमें ऐसे लोगों को ढूंढना पड़ेगा जिन्होंने दुआएं की हों और उनकी दुआएं कबूल हो गई हों।
मुदब्बर भाई, आप पूछ रहे थे ना कि वो बच्चा कौन है, और हम क्या अबुर रहमान की कहानी देख और सुन सकते हैं। वो वीडियो मैं इसलिए साथ लेकर आया था क्योंकि बच्चों को भी समझ आ जाए कि दुआ कितनी मजबूत होती है। दुआ तो नामुमकिन चीज को भी मुमकिन बना देती है।
अरे वाह डॉक्टर साहब, बिल्कुल ठीक याद दिलाया आपने। और आपने बताया था ना कि उस बच्चे को तो दिल की बीमारी थी।
अरे मुदब्बर भाई, ठहर जाए, कुछ तो वीडियो को भी बताने दें।
बच्चों की ये दुनिया।
बचकान, तो ये है हमारे छोटे भाई अब्दुल रहमान की कहानी। एक बहुत ही प्यारी कहानी। अब्दुल रहमान, आप बचकान की तरह एक अहमदी बच्चा जो जर्मनी में रहता है। ये उसकी तस्वीर है जब वो पैदा हुआ था। तो वो एक छोटा सा प्यारा सा मुन्ना सा बच्चा था। मगर एक खास बात थी, जब अब्दुल रहमान पैदा हुआ, इतना बीमार हो गया कि कुछ पता नहीं चल रहा था कि अब्दुल रहमान ठीक भी होगा कि नहीं। अब्दुल रहमान को एक बहुत ही खतरनाक दिल की बीमारी थी। छोटे से दिल में एक बहुत ही बड़ी बीमारी। हमने उसके पापा से बात की है। ये देखें, वो हमें बताएंगे कि क्या हुआ था।
पैदाइश के बाद इसका रंग नीला हो रहा था, तो डॉक्टर जब चेक उन्होंने किया तो उन्होंने कहा इसको हार्ट का प्रॉब्लम है।
बचकान, डॉक्टर कहते थे हम इसके दिल के लिए कुछ नहीं कर सकते, इसको तो एक नया दिल चाहिए है। हाय, आपको तो पता है कि हम क्या करते हैं अगर बहुत परेशानी हो। हम दुआ करते हैं, अल्लाह से दुआ करते हैं, प्यारे अल्लाह मियाँ, हमें आपकी मदद चाहिए है। हम बहुत परेशान हैं और सिर्फ आप हमारी मदद कर सकते हो। और दूसरी बात जो हम करते हैं, हम अल्लाह के जो सबसे प्यारे वजूद है ना इस दुनिया में, उनको भी कहते हैं कि आप भी हमारे लिए दुआ करें। यानी हम हजूर को कहते हैं। अब्दुल रहमान के अम्मी और अब्बू ने भी यही दुआ की कि अल्लाह मियाँ हमारी मदद करे, और प्यारे हजूर को भी कहते रहे कि हमारे लिए दुआ करें।
खिलाफत से बदल जाती है तकदीरे जल्दी।
बचकान, अब्दुल रहमान बहुत बीमार हो गया। टाइम बहुत कम था, कोई नया दिल ढूंढ रहे थे। अब्दुल रहमान की ख्वाहिश थी कि किसी तरह प्यारे हजूर से मुलाकात हो सके, ताकि खुद भी हजूर को दुआ के लिए कह सके। ये दुआ थी कि अचानक एक खबर आई।
उस दौरान में पता चला कि हजूर जर्मनी आ रहे हैं, तो ये मेरे लिए बड़ी खुशी की एक बात थी। दिल में वो दोबारा से वो वाली ख्वाहिश, वो उमंग फिर से हो गई कि हजूर से मुलाकात हो जाएगी, हजूर आ रहे हैं यहाँ पे। फिर डॉक्टर से दोबारा बात की कि फ्रैंकफर्ट तक हमने जाना है, उसमें हमें 4 घंटे का टाइम फ्रेम दे दें। खैर उन्होंने हमें इजाज़त नहीं दी। हम उसी तरह फिर दुआएं शुरू हो गए कि अल्लाह ताला ने जहाँ इतना एक हौसला दिया, एक आस बंधाई है हमारी कि ऐसा हजूर यहाँ पे आ गए हैं। मैंने ऊपर आसमान की तरफ मुंह किया और मैंने कहा अल्लाह मैं तेरा काम कर रहा हूँ, तू मेरी परेशानी दूर कर दे। और फिर देखें अल्लाह ताला ने किस तरह दूर की। अल्लाह ताला ने अपने प्यारे को घर तक भेज दिया।
तू सबका है माँ, वो तू सबका है मैं जा।
खबर आई प्यारे हजूर जर्मनी आ रहे हैं, और आपको पता है कि कहाँ? उस ही शहर में जहाँ अब्दुर्रहमान रहता है। अब्दुर्रहमान बहुत खुश हुआ और अस्पताल वालों को कह दिया मैं जा रहा हूँ। उन्होंने कहा बेटे कहाँ जा रहे हो? तुम तो कहीं नहीं जा सकते, आप तो बहुत ही बीमार हो।
मैं हौसला अपना बना के मैं चला गया डॉक्टर के पास, जिस पे डॉक्टर ने ये कहा कि आप साइन करके जा सकते हैं अपनी जिम्मेदारी पे।
अब्दुर्रहमान ने बिस्मिल्लाह कहा और वहाँ पहुँच गया जहाँ हजूर ने जुम्मा पढ़ाना था। एक सवाल तो था कि क्या वो हजूर को भी मिल सकते हैं? इतने सारे लोग आए हैं